Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to sew this beautiful bustier dress with a turtleneck yoke. You can see my yoke here. It's a flat neck yoke. It's not the one that comes high. So I'll be teaching you how you can make yours to just lay flat on your yoke just like this. Also, this dress has a front sleeves and it has puff sleeves. Now, in the previous tutorial, we went about the cutting of this dress. If you haven't seen that, I'll be putting the link in my description box so you can just go ahead and check that out. Without further ado, let's dive right into this tutorial. So like I said before, in the previous tutorial, we already went about the cutting of this. Here I have my front and my back bodies, and I also have my yoke. So what I'm going to do now is to notch the underbust on the side front and also on the center front. To join the front piece together, I'm just going to take out my pattern paper. I'll keep the main fabric here and I'll be taking out the lining. Then for the side front, I'll remove the pattern paper too and I'll place them side by side just like this. The next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and iron my wadding. And as you can see here, I've ironed my wadding. Make sure to leave 0.5 inch allowance at the top of this place, and then down here make sure that your wadding stops exactly at the underbust point that you mark. Also on the side front, I also ironed my wadding and I left 0.5 inch up here, and then I also made sure I stop at the underbust, and you can see how I curved this side of the wadding. Make sure you do yours like that. Now to join this together, I'm going to place the side front on the center front, right sides facing each other, and I'm going to go ahead and pin this down just like this. After pinning this down, what I'll be doing is to make a stitch on this. I'll be stitching this down together using 0.5 inch stitching allowance and opening this to the other side. You can see what I have. Now I'll be doing the same thing to the other side. Now I'm going to go to my machine and stitch this down using 0.5 inch stitching allowance on both sides. After stitching it down, you can see the stitch I have here. Now what we'll be doing is to iron this out. So to do that, what I'll be doing first is to make notches. So I'll be showing you guys where you'll be making your notches. First is down here, so we'll be ironing this seam open. I'm just going to make the notch on this other side, and then we'll be notching this part here, and another notch will be making it up here. So what I'll do now is to bring in my arm and I'll iron these seams open. After ironing these seams open, you can see how beautiful this looks. I'll just turn that over to the right side. And you can see what I have. And also do not forget that whatever you're doing to your main fabric, you'll also be doing it to your lining, as you can see my lining here. Now coming to the front part of this dress, we have this design in front there, and I've already gone ahead to cut it out. So I have it 4 inches here, and on fold is 2 inches. And then the length, you can just make it the length of your front bodice. Okay, now what I'll be doing is to go ahead and notch the midpoint. I'll also be notching my front bodice at the midpoint. Now what we are trying to do here is to join all the front pieces together. So I'm just going to turn it this way so you see what I'm doing. I'll be placing this design, making sure that the notch points are together just like this. The next thing I'll be doing is to bring in my yoke, and for the yoke, remember when we're cutting it out, we cut the front and the back together because we don't want to have a joining at the shoulder. So that's why it's like this, for those of you that have seen the previous tutorial. Now what I'll just be doing here is to also notch the midpoint of the front yoke, and then I'm going to place it right side to the main fabric just like this. So this is how you should place yours, making sure that the midpoints are together. And finally, I'm going to notch the midpoint of the lining, and then make sure I place it right side to everything there. Now I'm going to go ahead and pin this down, and then I'll be stitching this down on my machine using about 0.5 inch stitching allowance. After stitching it down, you can see what I have here, and if you notice, I have a second stitch here. I've gone ahead to stitch this down towards the lining. This is going to help the lining to stay in place. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is to attach this to my back piece. For the back piece, I'll be taking out my pattern paper and I'll be separating them like this. Then I'll just be using one piece of the back to illustrate what we are going to do. Don't forget to notch your that point on all your back piece. Now what I'll be doing is I'm going to bring in my yoke, and I'm going to place my yoke right sides on the main fabric. And then to finish this off, I'm going to bring in my lining to cover up everything. Then I'm going to pin this down like this. I'll go to my machine and make a stitch using 0.5 inch stitching allowance. Now let's just repeat this again. Place the lining right sides to the main fabric. Then cover everything up with your lining. Pin it down. And then make a stitch using 0.5 inch stitching allowance. I hope that's clear. Now after doing that, you can see that I've stitched everything down towards the lining, and also I've stitched my darts. So don't forget to close up your darts, okay? Now the next thing we'll be doing here is to close the sides of our pieces here. So to do that, I'm just going to place them right sides facing each other this way, and then I'm going to pin down the sides. Make sure that your yoke is not in the way. If your yoke is in the way, just push it in and then pin down only the main fabric and the lining together at the sides. I'll be doing the same thing to this other one. And then for the front piece, I'll be doing it the same thing. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and trim off the excess of this design I have here at the armhole. And then I'm going to turn this over right sides facing each other. The reason why it's looking kind of bulky, it's because we have the front and the back together. So there's no need to get confused here, okay? Now I'm going to pin down the sides. And then I'll go ahead and stitch this down also using 0.5 inch stitching allowance. After stitching it down at the sides, you can see how beautiful this came out for both the front and the back. I'll just be placing the front and the back together like this. And what we'll be doing here is to trim out the excesses we have at the armhole area, just to make everything align properly. Now after we are done doing that, what we'll be doing now is to join this to the skirt part. So let's go ahead and put the skirt part together. For the down part, we'll be starting with the front piece. As you see me label here F, which is for the front. And if you notice here, we have a line from the top all the way to the length of this part. Now this line is 1.5 inch wide, and it's because of the slit we have. Cut this in the previous tutorial. Like I said before, the link is in my description box. You can go ahead and check that out. Now the first thing I'll be doing is to join this together. And to do that, I'm going to pin this down. And then I'm going to determine how long I want my slit to be. So I want my slit to start about 1 inch after my knee line. So I'm just going to mark that there. Now I'm going to make a stitch from this point. Then I'm going to stop at this point here, which I marked, and the rest is going to be my slit. Now after stitching it down, I've gone ahead to iron this open, and you can see how beautiful that looks. I ironed it all the way to the down part, and you can see my slit is visible here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to turn this to the right side. And I'll be bringing in the front part of my upper bodice. Now I'll be joining these together, and to do that, I've already notched the midpoint of the skirt and the midpoint of the upper bodice. I'm just going to place the notches together, and then I'll be pinning this down at the waistline just like this. I'll be going to my machine. I'll stitch this down using 0.5 inch stitching allowance. After stitching this down, you can see how beautiful this came out. Now the next thing we'll be doing is to do the same thing to the back piece. To do this to the back piece, I have the two sides of my down piece here, and what I'm going to do is to use one to illustrate to you guys what we'll be doing. Now I'm going to bring in the upper part of my back piece. Now before we join this together, what I usually do to reduce zipper bulge at the back is that I like to come in by 0.5 inch at the center back. Okay, at the center back you come up by 0.5 inch, and then this 0.5 inch we are going to cut it to the side. Now note that you're not cutting this 0.5 inch all the way along. You just trim it like I'm doing here to the side, because you want the side to still remain the same length with the front. So you're not cutting off the side, you're just going to trim this into the side just like this. Now after doing that, I'm going to place this right side to the down piece, and then I'm going to pin this down. I'll also stitch this down using 0.5 inch stitching allowance, and I'll be doing the same thing to the other side. Now after doing that, you can see how beautiful this came out. What we'll be doing next is to determine where we want our zipper to stop. So I want my zipper to stop around this area here, so I'm just going to mark it. And then I'm going to use my pin and I'm going to pin this down, starting with the waistline. I'll just pin this down all the way to the length of the dress. Now what I'm going to do is that from here to this point is my zipper, right? Now from this point my zipper is stopping all the way to the length of the skirt. I'm going to close it up, and this is because we already have slit in front, so there will be no need for slit at the back. So we are closing everything up. Now I'm done stitching that down. I've also gone ahead to iron this. You can see what I have here. I've also just pinned down my zipper allowance. Okay, we'll be inserting the zipper much later. Now the next thing we'll be doing is to insert the sleeves, and to insert the sleeves, the first thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and take the full measurement of what I have around my armhole. After doing that, you can see what I have here. It's about 25 inches. So now to insert the sleeve, the first thing you are going to do is to notch the midpoint of your yoke here, just like you see me doing. Now for this puff sleeve, I created a detailed tutorial for the puff sleeve, so I'll be putting the link in my description box. If you would like to make a puff sleeve, you can click on it and watch. And for those that want to make a normal long sleeve that came with the original dress, I have a link also in my description box which will teach you how to draft a basic long sleeve pattern. So now this is my sleeve here, and I've already gone ahead to notch the midpoint of the sleeve, and I'm going to place it right side to my yoke just like this. Now I'm going to pin this down at the center part, and what we'll be doing is to pleat this at the center part. So first I'm going to take the end of the sleeve and place it to the armhole just like this, and I'm going to pin this down. I'll continue pinning it down towards the center. And then what I have as excess, I'm going to be pleating it at the center. So I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to explain. The reason why we started from the side and not the center is because we want to pleat the excess at the center. So I'll just repeat the same thing to this other side. Now after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down on my machine using 0.5 inch stitching allowance. Now I'm just going to turn this over. This is what we should have after stitching it down. As you can see here, there is a puff effect at this center here. Now after stitching it down, you can see how this came out. The next thing I'm going to do is to insert my band. I have a detailed tutorial, so I'm going to put the link in the description box for those of you that are interested in puff sleeve. Okay, as you can see here, I've inserted my band already, and this is how beautiful it's looking. The next thing we are going to do now is to insert our turtleneck, and to do that, the first thing you will do is to take the measurement you have around your neckline, just like I'm doing here. And after doing that, you can see here that what I have is about 24 inches. To cut out the turtleneck, I have my fabric here already on fold. I'm going to go ahead and fold it into two again, just like this. The first thing I'm going to do is to mark a starting line at the top of this place, just to serve as my guide. And then I got 24 as my round neck, right? Now I'm going to divide 24 into 4 because what we have here is folded into 4. Okay, so divide what you get into 4. For me, I have 6. So starting from this center here, I'm going to mark 6 inches here, and then from the same point I'm going to continue marking 6 inches until I get to the end, just like you see me doing here. Now after doing that, I'll just connect this point with a curve. And then for the length of the turtleneck, I'm going to be using 2 inches. So starting from this line here, I'm going to be marking 2 inches all the way around. And I'll also be connecting this together. These 2 inches includes the stitching allowance which you'll be using to attach it to the main yoke. Okay, so now after doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. So after cutting it out, this is what we have. Now another thing I like to do is just to measure this to be sure it is accurate. This is not compulsory because you can always trim off the excess after stitching it down on your yoke. So I like to divide the neck, which is 24. I got 24 for mine, so I'm going to divide it by 2, and I have 12. So the measurement I'm having around here should be around 12 inches. And as you can see here, I have a little excess, so I'm just going to mark that and trim that off. But like I said before, this particular part is not compulsory because you can always stitch it down on your yoke and then trim out the excess you have. Okay, opening this up, you can see that I have two pieces here. One is going to be serving as the lining. So the first thing I'm going to do now is to pin this down around the neckline. And then I'm going to go to my machine and stitch this down. I'm going to show you guys how I like to do this. Now, going to my machine, I like to start with a wider stitch. Let's say, for example, using 0.5 inch stitching allowance. Then when I get towards the middle, I like to reduce the stitch, coming to about 0.3 or thereabouts. So you can see here, and then getting to the end, I'll also increase it back to 0.5. Now, after doing that, you can see what I have here. Coming from this side, the stitch is bigger, and getting to this area, it's a little thinner. And then getting to the side, it's the same size as I started before. So this is what I like to do. It gives me a great curve whenever I do it like this. So this is just what I wanted to share with you guys. Now, after doing that, I'm just going to trim off the excess I have here. And then don't forget to always notch curved stitches. So I'm going to just notch each point just like I'm doing here. Now I'm going to turn this over to the right side, and I'm going to use my hemming gum to iron this down. So I'll just be inserting my hemming gum in between the stitch here at the top, and I'm going to press everything down. So after giving it a good press, this is how beautiful it came out. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is to make a stitch at this down place just to secure them together. After making the stitch, you can see the stitch down here. Now I'm going to attach this to my main dress. So I'm just going to get the midpoint like this. I'll notch the midpoint, and then I'm going to bring it to my dress, and I'll also notch the midpoint of my neckline here. Now I'm going to place the notches together in the middle, and I'm going to pin it down. I'll continue pinning it down all the way around. And as you can see here, I have excess also. So doing the first one wasn't so important, but I just like to do it. So it's just to tell you that you can go ahead and sew it and then trim off the excess later. Now what I'm going to do is to stitch this down using 0.5 inch stitching allowance, and also insert your zipper. After stitching it down, you can see how beautiful this is looking, and then you saw the effect at the beginning of the video. So if you'd like to sew a flat turtleneck, this is how you should go about it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now is to join my dress by the sides. So I'm just going to turn this right sides facing each other, and I'm just going to take out my body measurement. So just take out your body measurement and stitch down your dress. After stitching down the dress, this is how beautiful this came out. I'm already loving my dress. And then next thing I'm going to do is for this slit here, I'm just going to put a hemming gum in between and give it a good press. After that, I'm just going to hem the down part of my dress, and that will be all. We have come to the end of this tutorial. I hope this tutorial was really helpful. Do let me know in the comment section. Also, if you have questions, you can also ask that in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching. Do not forget to hit on that subscribe button, like this, and share this to family and friends who you think would need this. I'll see you guys in my next tutorial.